Have you ever met someone who felt like you're opposite in every way and somehow they still touched the part of you you never talk about? And have you ever wondered why destiny sometimes forces people into the same space not to punish them, but to expose what they have been running from inside themselves? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a story that looks like a romance set up on the surface to people forced to live together, one playful, one serious. But underneath, it is really a lesson about karma and cultivation. It is about how the mind creates afflictions like pride, control, and fear. It is about how compassion is not only how you treat the other person, but also how you stop your own old wounds from turning into new harm. And it is about the quiet truth that love is not only a feeling. Love is a practice. It is the daily choice to see clearly, to be kind, to set boundaries without cruelty, and to let the heart stay open without becoming a prisoner of attachment. Let us begin with him. His name is Elias. Elias is the kind of person everyone calls reliable. He is early to everything. He keeps promises. He does not waste money. He does not waste time. He is the person who brings a charger when everyone else forgot. The person who reads the instructions. The person who plans for tomorrow even while everyone is still laughing about today. From the outside, Elias looks calm, but inside his calm is actually tension, wearing a clean suit. He lives with a constant internal rule that he never says out loud. If I relax, something will fall apart. This rule did not come from nowhere. Elias grew up in a home where adults were unpredictable. One day there was warmth. The next day there was shouting. Bills were late. Plans collapsed. People made promises they could not keep. So Elias learned a strategy that made him feel safe. Control. Control the schedule. Control the money. Control the emotions. Control the risk. He learned to be serious because seriousness felt like armor. When he was serious, nobody could accuse him of being careless. When he was serious, he could pretend he was above disappointment. When he was serious, he did not have to show the part of him that was scared of being left behind. Now let us meet her. Her name is Nora. Nora is the kind of person who walks into a room and the air feels lighter. She jokes easily. She teases people gently. She can turn awkward silence into laughter without forcing it. She notices small things. She remembers what you said last week. She knows how to make a person feel included. From the outside, Nora looks carefree, but inside, her playfulness is not only a personality, it is also a survival skill. Nora learned early that when the world feels heavy, the fastest way to breathe is to create a little light. When her family argued, she became the one who made a joke so the anger would loosen. When someone cried, she became the one who distracted them so they could rest. When she felt fear, she smiled because smiling made others stay calm, and when others stayed calm, she felt safer. So yes, Nora is playful. But her playfulness also hides something tender, a fear that if she becomes too serious, she will drown. So we have two people both using a strategy. Elias uses seriousness to avoid chaos. Nora uses playfulness to avoid despair. Both strategies kept them alive in their own ways. Both strategies also create blind spots. And blind spots are where karma grows. Because karma is not only big dramatic events. Karma is the daily habit that keeps repeating until you finally see it. It is the pattern you call personality until it starts costing you relationships and peace. Now destiny steps in with a situation that neither of them asked for. Forced to live together. It happens in a way that feels ordinary at first. A housing mistake. Bailey's problem. Family emergency. A temporary arrangement that turns into weeks, then months, then a new normal that nobody planned. Elias is renting a small apartment near work. He keeps it clean. Everything has a place. Silence is predictable. The routine is stable. Then the landlord calls and says, "There was a mistake. The unit is being renovated. You need to move for a while. We can place you in a shared unit temporarily." Elias refuses at first. He hates uncertainty. He hates sharing space. He hates feeling out of control. But the options are limited. So he agrees with a tight jaw and a mind already preparing for disaster. On moving day, he arrives at the shared unit and meets Nora. Nora opens the door wearing mismatched socks and an easy smile. She says, "Welcome, roommate. Do you want tea, or do you want to pretend you do not want tea but secretly want tea?" Elias does not smile. He nods stiffly, uncarries his boxes, and like a person entering enemy territory. Nora watches him and immediately senses the tension. She tries to lighten it. She makes a joke about his perfectly labeled boxes. She says, "You look like you pack emotions in alphabetical order." Elias responds with a short sentence, "I like things organized." Nora grins and says, "Great. Then you can organize my chaos." Elias does not find that funny. That first week is exactly what you would expect. They clash in 100 small ways that reveal their inner habits. Elias wants quiet at night. Nora plays soft music while cooking and hums along because it makes the room feel alive. Elias wants rules about cleaning. Nora cleans but in bursts and with laughter, and sometimes she forgets a cup in the sink because she got distracted by a silly story. Elias wants communication that is direct and serious. Nora communicates with jokes and small gestures and playful teasing. Elias thinks Nora is irresponsible. Nora thinks Elias is emotionally locked. Neither says it out loud at first. They swallow their irritation because they are adults and because the arrangement is supposed to be temporary. But karma does not care about temporary. Karma cares about what you repeat. And they keep repeating the same misunderstanding. Elias interprets Nora as threat to stability. Nora interprets Elias as threat to joy. So tension grows. One evening it finally breaks. Nora comes home late after meeting friends. She is in a good mood. She brings leftovers for Elias because she knows he works hard. She sets the container on the counter like a peace offering and says, "I brought you food because your face looks like you forget to eat when you are stressed." Elias looks at the container and says, "Why are you home so late without telling me?" Nora blinks. She laughs softly because she thinks he is joking. Elias does not laugh. Nora says, "I am your roommate, not your schedule." Elias says, "When you share a home, you communicate." Nora says, "I do not owe you permission." Elias says, "It is not permission, it is respect." Nora feels her chest tighten. She hears a familiar tone in his voice. Control. Her old fear rises. "If someone tries to control me, I will disappear." So she snaps back. "You are not my parent. Stop acting like the world will end if everything is not perfect." Elias flinches as if struck, because the truth is he does feel like the world will end. He just hides it under discipline. He says quietly, "I do not want perfect. I want predictable." Nora says life is not predictable. Elias says then it is dangerous. They stare at each other. The room is suddenly very quiet. This is the moment where a romance story usually adds dramatic music and jealousy and big feelings. But the deeper moment is what happens inside them, because both of them are suddenly exposed. Elias realizes his seriousness is not strength. It is fear. Nora realizes her playfulness is not freedom. It is avoidance. Neither wants to admit it, but the body knows. That night, they sleep in separate emotional worlds, even though they are under the same roof. Elias lies awake thinking about rules and boundaries and how to regain control. Nora lies awake thinking about how suffocating it feels when someone demands predictability like an offering. Now the story shifts in a way that reveals wisdom. The next morning, Nora does something unexpected. She apologizes, not dramatically, not with tears, just honestly. "I snapped. I do not like being controlled. It makes me feel small. But I also understand you were not trying to hurt me. You were anxious." Elias is surprised. He expected more fighting. He expected manipulation. He expected blame. He says, "I am not anxious." Nora looks at him gently and says, "Yes, you are. You just call it responsibility." Elias feels heat in his face. Pride rises. Pride is an affliction. Pride protects the ego from feeling vulnerable. He almost shuts down. Then he remembers something that he does not usually remember. A memory from childhood. A night when the power went out and he sat in the dark listening to adults argue. The fear in his stomach. The sense that he had to become the strong one because nobody else would. He swallows. He says quietly, "I do not like surprises." Nora says, "I know." Elias says, "I do not like feeling like I cannot prevent problems." Nora nods slowly. Then she says something that becomes a turning point. "You cannot prevent every problem, but you can learn to be with problems without turning into a prism." Elias does not know what to say, because part of him knows she is right. This is where cultivation begins. Cultivation means training the mind away from afflictions and toward wisdom. For Elias, the affliction is control. For Nora, the affliction is avoidance. Both are rooted in fear. So life places them together like two mirrors. A few days later, Nora gets sick. Nothing extreme, but enough that she feels weak. Her playful energy drops. She does not joke. She lies on the couch with a blanket and quiet eyes. Elias comes home and sees her like that, and something shifts. He is used to Nora being bright. Seeing her quiet makes him uncomfortable because it reveals something he did not want to see. Nora is human, not a clown, not a mood maker. Human. He asks if she needs anything. Nora smiles faintly and says soup maybe. Elias goes to the kitchen and makes soup. He follows a recipe precisely because that is how he knows how to care. He brings it to her and sets it down carefully. Nora looks at him, then says, "Thank you." Elias says, "You should rest." Nora says, "I will." Then she adds quietly, "You are kinder than you act." Elias feels something in his chest. He wants to deny it, but he cannot. That night he notices something. Caring for Nora felt natural. It did not feel like losing control. It felt like purpose. He realizes his seriousness is not the problem. The problem is when seriousness becomes armor that blocks tenderness. This is a lesson in compassion. Compassion does not mean becoming soft and careless. Compassion means allowing the heart to stay open while the mind stays clear. Meanwhile, Nora has her own lesson while she is sick. Without her usual jokes, she feels exposed. She notices she wants to perform, even when nobody asked. She notices she wants to make Elias comfortable, so he will not think she is weak. Then she realizes that habit is also a chain, so she practices something new. She allows herself to be cared for without entertaining. That is also compassion. Compassion for herself. When she recovers, she tells Elias something honest. "I joke a lot because if I get too quiet, I start feeling heavy things." Elias says, "Like what?" Nora hesitates, then says, "Loneliness, fear, old sadness." Elias looks at her. He is not good with emotional conversations. He usually fixes problems, but he cannot fix this. So he does something that becomes a quiet form of wisdom. He listens. He does not interrupt. He does not solve. He does not judge. He listens. Nora feels tears rise unexpectedly because being listened to without being corrected feels rare. This is how love begins in real life, not with fireworks, with being seen. Now, of course, the story does not become easy immediately. Karma does not dissolve in one conversation. Patterns return because they are practiced deeply. Elias still gets irritated when Nora is messy. Nora still feels trapped when Elias asks for schedules. But now they have awareness. Awareness creates a pause. A pause creates choice. Choice changes destiny. One weekend they get into another conflict. Nora invites a friend over without warning. Elias comes home expecting quiet and finds laughter in the living room. The old Elias wants to explode. The old Nora wants to mock his rigidity. But now something different happens. Elias pauses. He feels the irritation in his body. Heat in chest, tight jaw, fast thoughts. He remembers the practice of direct awareness. Feel it. Do not become it. He breathes slowly and says calmly, "Nora, I need a heads up next time." Nora is surprised by the calm tone. She could have reacted defensively, but she pauses too. She says, "You are right. I should have told you." Then she adds with a small smile, "I forgot because I was excited." Elias almost smiles. Almost. After the friend leaves, Nora sits with Elias and says, "I do not want you to feel like you have no space here." Elias says, "I do not want you to feel like you cannot breathe here." They stare at each other. This is the moment where something shifts from roommates managing conflict into two souls learning from each other. Now the romantic part begins in a way neither expected. Elias starts noticing small things about Nora that he used to dismiss. The way she notices people who are left out. The way she brings warmth to ordinary moments. The way she can be playful without being cruel. The way she forgives quickly without keeping score. He realizes her playfulness is not childish. It is resilience. Nora starts noticing small things about Elias that she used to mock. The way he is consistent. The way he protects stability. The way he shows care through actions. The way he keeps promises even when nobody is watching. She realizes his seriousness is not coldness. It is devotion to responsibility. But both still have shadows. Elias still uses control to avoid vulnerability. Nora still uses humor to avoid depth. So destiny offers a deeper test. Elias receives news from his family. A parent is ill. It triggers his old childhood fear. Suddenly his need for control intensifies. He starts cleaning obsessively. He starts planning everything. He becomes more rigid. He becomes less patient. Nora notices the shift and feels her own fear rise. When someone becomes rigid, she expects to be judged or controlled. She could run emotionally. She could retreat into jokes. She could dismiss him. Instead, she practices compassion. She sits with him at the kitchen table and says, "You are scared." Elias says, "I am fine." Nora says, "You are not fine. And you do not have to pretend with me." Elias looks away. His eyes are tight. He hates being seen in weakness. Nora reaches across the table but does not force touch. She simply places her hand near his. An offer, not a demand. Elias feels something break open inside him. He whispers, "I do not know how to handle this." Nora says, "You do not have to handle it alone." Elias finally admits he feels like the world is unstable again, like childhood. Nora says, "I cannot fix it, but I can sit with you in it." That sentence is a form of awakening. Because much suffering comes from thinking you must control life to survive. Wisdom says you can survive by learning to be present. That night, Elias cries quietly, not dramatically. Just a few tears that release years of holding. Nora does not make jokes. She stays still. She breathes with him. She lets silence be a shelter. This is compassion that eradicates afflictions, because in that moment, control loosens. In that moment, the affliction of pride loosens. In that moment, fear is held with awareness. Now love deepens not because they are perfect, but because they are honest. Weeks pass. The temporary living arrangement continues longer than expected. Renovation delays, paperwork, more uncertainty. In the past, Elias would have panicked. Now he practices. He still likes structure, but he learns to allow some flexibility. He learns to laugh a little. Nora teaches him that laughter is not disrespect. Laughter can be release. Nora still loves spontaneity, but she learns to communicate better. She learns that boundaries are not prisons when they are spoken with kindness. Elias teaches her that predictability can be a gift, not a chain. They begin sharing small rituals: tea at night, a short walk in the evening, quiet music while cooking, a few minutes of breathing when stress rises. These small rituals are cultivation. They plant seeds of steadiness. Then the moment arrives that the source title hinted at. Even he never expected to fall so hard for her. It happens on an ordinary day. Nora is in the kitchen dancing lightly while stirring soup, not performing, just being herself. She is laughing at something silly on her phone, but then she looks up and meets Elias' eyes. Elias is watching her, not judging, not planning, just watching. Nora raises an eyebrow like what? Elias says quietly, "You make the room feel safe in a way I do not understand." Nora smiles and says, "You make the room feel safe in a way I do not understand." They both laugh softly. Then silence. And in the silence, Elias realizes he is not just attached to her presence. He respects her heart. He says something simple: "I think I am falling for you." Nora does not tease him. She does not play it off. Her eyes soften. She says, "I think you already did." Elias laughs like he is embarrassed by his own humanity. Then he says the line that reveals his growth: "I am scared." Nora says, "I know." Elias says, "I do not want to lose myself in love." Nora says, "Then do not." Love is not losing yourself. Love is bringing your best self. This is where the story becomes a teaching about attachment. Many people confuse love with clinging. Clinging says you must stay or I will break. Love says I choose you and I also respect your freedom. Clinging demands control. Love practices trust. Elias is learning trust. Nora is learning depth. Together they are learning wisdom. Now let us talk about the karmic lesson. In the first weeks, they repeated old patterns: control versus chaos, seriousness versus play. Each conflict planted seeds of separation. Then they began practicing awareness and compassion. Each pause planted seeds of connection. Each honest conversation planted seeds of trust. That is karma, not mystical, practical. The more you practice defensiveness, the more defensive your life becomes. The more you practice compassion with boundaries, the more stable your relationships become. Destiny changes when practice changes. Now the story reaches its emotional conclusion in a way that also respects wisdom. Their living arrangement eventually ends. Elias is offered his old apartment back. Nora is offered a different place. They stand in the living room surrounded by boxes again. The same scene as the beginning, but with different hearts. Nora tries to joke and says, "Look at you with your labeled boxes again." Elias smiles this time. A real smile. He says, do you want to keep living together intentionally instead of accidentally? Nora pauses. This is a serious question. It is not a fantasy moment. It is a real decision with real consequences. She asks, are you sure? Because you will have to live with my chaos sometimes. Elias says, and you will have to live with my seriousness sometimes. Nora says, that sounds like suffering. Elias says, maybe, but the kind that leads to growth. They both laugh softly. Then Nora says, I want to, but we have to promise something. Elias says, what? Nora says, when we get triggered, we practice. We do not punish each other with silence. We do not use control as a weapon. We do not use humor to avoid truth. We come back to breath. We come back to honesty. Elias nods. He says, and we do not confuse love with ownership. Nora says, yes. This is the vow of wisdom, not the vow of fantasy. So they move forward, not as perfect people, as practicing people. Now I want to close with the reflection that matters for you. Many of us think the opposite person is the problem. The serious person thinks the playful person is immature. The playful person thinks the serious person is cold. But often the opposite person is a mirror. They show you what you overuse. They show you what you avoid. They show you what you could integrate to become whole. If you are very serious, you might need to cultivate lightness. If you are very playful, you might need to cultivate stillness. If you cling to control, you might need to cultivate trust. If you avoid depth, you might need to cultivate courage. That is the path of awakening inside relationship. Relationship is not only romance. Relationship is the place where afflictions appear so you can see them. If you see them, you can transform them. If you transform them, you change your karma. If you change your karma, you change your destiny. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been forced into a situation you did not want at first, but later realized it changed you for the better? And have you ever loved someone who was your opposite and learned something spiritual through that relationship? Share your story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, press like and leave a comment to support these long-form story teachings. Until next time, remember this: the person who irritates you might be the teacher you did not request. And the moment you practice compassion instead of reflex is the moment you stop repeating the old cycle and start living a wiser destiny.